So I've been pretty vocal about the fact that I don't like basing.
Yeah, you're vocal about a lot of things.
What was that?
Nothing.
I f***ing hate you.
I hate you too. You loudmouth bitch.
I've never been big on basing, and for the most part I just don't do it. Even back in the day when I was playing more and painting less, it was still basically just glue, sand, paint, done. Now I will concede to the fact that some bases and displays are pretty dope, and they do add to the setting and the atmosphere. Which is a big bonus when it comes to displays for painting comps, which honestly looks like the direction that we're heading in. So I'm just gonna have to bite the pillow and take it. Didn't even buy me dinner first.
I've had this plinth sitting around for a while, and yes, we are going to get rid of that top bit of cork. Also, yes, this is a 3D printed plinth. I'd go into further detail and actually show you how I printed it off, but I broke the printer. And even when it was supposed to be idiot proof, I came out victorious. Because this one's been kicking around on my desk for a little while, it's got a few dings and glue spills on it, so we're going to fix that by literally just cutting it away. And this is a great trick for two reasons. One, it means we get to use a few more things that would otherwise be quote unquote ruined. And two, it's actually going to add a little bit more interest instead of it just being a box. So step one is pick up your snippers and go at it like it kicked your dog, pissed on the toilet seat, took the batteries out of the remote, hid your keys, and owes you money. And the reason that I had to go in harder than when the US finds out that another country has oil is because the internal structure of 3D prints. You can't see them on the outside, obviously, because they're internal, but that's what we're battling against. And then when you finally do break through, you'll probably have to whip out your scalpel and clean up those edges. All we're really trying to do here is make sure all the sides are flush from that cut. And once it's as smooth as freshly shaved out of the shower, we need to plug that hole. And personally, I really like green stuff for this. Because once it's all mixed together and stretched out, it can cover everything, and those internal structures and supports are basically going to hold it in shape. But the big plus is that we don't actually have to fill the holes or that internal void. We're just laying down a cover and letting it cure. While it's still a little bit malleable, I'm going to go ahead and glue in a few bits of cork just to build up something to be somewhat of an internal frame. But this will not be our final rock, and let me be clear, because cork doesn't look like rock. Don't get me wrong, cork is one of the most useful basing materials in the entirety of the hobby. But it's a building material. I see a lot of people using cork as their final texture for rocks, and it just doesn't quite sell. Now, I'm not here to yuck your yum. I'm a Slanesh player. I'm generally here to yum your yuck. And if you're looking over at some bases because you've already done this, don't worry, we've all been there. But the key to making something look natural and somewhat realistic is variation of texture. And just ripping off sides of cork doesn't do that. But it does give you a texture. And we're going to incorporate that texture in basically the rest of what we do here. Another trick with cork is just to let it do what it wants to do. Just rip it off with your fingernails instead of trying to make a clean cut. And if you do build it up in layers, you've got to hide that gap. But I'm going to show you a couple of ways to do that in just a minute. Because we've got this big old tear out of the plinth, I'm not only building up, but I'm also building a little bit down. And yes, while I did say don't cut it, I'm going to cut it. But this time around, it's because I'm trying to do something a little bit different. All I'm trying to do is remove a little bit of material to make a flatter section so I can come in and glue some more parts to it. Adding spare parts from different kits is a great way to make it all tie in together. But we need some more texture, and for that I'm going to use some gap filler. When you pick up your cork from the hardware store, go and grab a tub of this as well. And if you happen to find some in the shed or the garage and it's all dried out, just chuck a little bit of water in there and it'll bring it back to life. And yes, I am just going to absolutely smother this with my finger. Because again, all I'm trying to do is create another variation of texture. But this time around, it's also going to help fill some of that gap. Imagine gap filler filling a gap. What a time we live in. The other cool thing about this gap filler in particular is it'll clean up with just a little bit of water. So while yes, it is a fairly messy application, it is an incredibly easy cleanup. Try not to get it everywhere, but don't stress if you do. And now, more texture. This is literally a jar of rocks. Because while cork doesn't look like rock, rock generally does look like rock. With the exception of pebbles that you get for fish tanks. But they come in cool colors, so I'll allow it. Now, this one's a 50-50. While it's great to have an idea of where you want the rocks, you still kind of want them to just do as they do naturally. So all I'm doing is laying down a bit of glue where I want them, and then I'm just going to sprinkle them in from above and see where they land. If you want more, add more. It's not hard.
Before we get to the next section, I just want to take a quick second to say I f***ing hate sand.
This is not an exaggeration. Between sand, the humidity, and exorbitant internet prices, this is why I don't live in the islands. But in this case, it's an absolute necessity because this is another form of texture variation. After this, we're going to need a little bit of plant life, so we're going to bring out the Sepultura Classic. Roots, bloody roots. And where did I buy these from? Absolutely nowhere. This is the excuse I use to not weed the garden frequently. But while they might be free because you can find them in any neglected backyard, there are a few steps that you should take. After I pulled these up, I left them outside to dry for a couple of days before putting them in the oven and baking them at a very low temperature for probably about half an hour. And this is just to kill off all the little germs and to make sure that they actually dried through. Because yes, if you don't make sure that both of those things are done, you can get mold inside of your Warhammer. Which I guess is fine if you're playing Nurgle. This is also a reason for me to tell you the kind of glue I use that I haven't done in the rest of this video yet. I typically use a Gorilla Super Glue, but the gel variant. The gel just gives it a little extra body for you to stick things into, and it doesn't just absolutely pour everywhere. Now, what basing video would be complete without grass tufts? 90% of the time, you just gotta grab a tuft and slap it down. But for this one, because it's not a grassy knoll, I'm gonna cut these things up and kind of stick them somewhere in between rocks. And the easiest way to do that is to put the grass tuft down first and then add rocks around it. But also cutting them down into little bits and using them sparingly is gonna make them look like patchy growth that you'll typically find on rocky embankments. The next tip for texture is texture paste. And it doesn't matter what color it is because we're priming over everything. The rust effects from the army paint are absolutely fantastic for anything like this. If you slap it on after you've painted something, you get a really cool matte finish, but if you put it on before, you just get all that awesome texture. And now once we prime it up and then throw a little zenithal on it, we're going to see all that kooky little texture pop out. This is the step that you're actually going to feel like you've created something cohesive. And by cohesive, I mean an absolute dog's breakfast, which is exactly what we want when we're creating natural structures. Now you can definitely adjust and balance to taste, but typically what we're after here is just pure natural chaos. Look at all those sweet ass textures in there. We're going to take this little victory, but the journey has not yet come to an end.
I make shitty painting videos, not shitty ads. Army Painter, in-games, Heresy 5, links in the description. You forgot about Patreon again. Yeah, there's a link to the Patreon in the description. Shut up.
The painting portion of this video is going to be a little bit rough. Because there's no step-by-step, I can't really teach you a step-by-step. So instead, we're going to look at different ideas and different techniques to somewhat achieve what we're after. And I'm going to let you in on a little secret. The same ideas that we use to approach building the base are the same ideas that we're going to use to approach painting the base. Maximum variation and maximum texture. To kick off some base tones, I'm just going to wet blend in a bunch of different colors. We've used Blanched Berry, the darkness, and now we're going into Blightened Green. So basically some dark reds, blues, and greens. The darkness is going to become our base color for shadows and rock and stone. Yes, Votan players, you heard rock and stone. The Blanched Berry is going to throw in a warm contrast and give us a basis for that mud and dirt kind of feel. And then the Blightened Green is going to make it feel like there's a little bit of vegetation in there. And while all of this is still wet, I'm going to come in with a little bit of grey castle. And this is to start building up some volumes, working on some textures, and really just making some of the details pop out. Basically, this is our highlighting step. But we want to keep this variation alive, so some things are going to get highlighted quite brightly, and the other stuff is going to be like me in college, barely touched. Once this is all dry, I'm going to come in with Voodoo Shade and absolutely drench it. Voodoo Shade is a wash from the John Blanche set by the Army Painter. And it has this awesome sepia, almost greenish kind of grimy hue to it. And using those kind of tones as a filter on top of all the desaturated tones that we already have, this is pure magic in a bottle. But again, we want variation, so some parts are going to get absolutely drenched, other parts are going to get a slight glazing. And I'm also just going to put a few little splotches on that armor panel, because using that as an undertone when we do come in to paint it, it's going to give us a very forgotten feel. And I'm also actually painting this with just a blue wash. It did take a couple of layers. Now we're going to pull out that Rust Effects paint again and just give it a couple of little splotches here and there. Now it is pretty strong, so I'm going to get a brush load of water and start feathering it out and just pushing those pigments in that little bit of grit wherever I can. This is just going to push in more color, more contrast, more variation. Now we have to do something with those roots, and these are not the easiest thing to paint when they're not attached on the other side. They will absolutely run away from you. I'm just taking an oak brown and trying to give it somewhat of a base coat. After that, I'm going to mix in a little bit of that same grey castle, before trying to give it a little bit of a highlight as well. And then after all of that's done, we're coming back in with that voodoo wash just to pull it all back in together. And now there's really only a few things left to do. One, I'm going to get Turnbull Turquoise and add in some shadows from below and kind of cover up a little bit of that overspray, and we need to put a little fella on top. Now this is a pretty grim base, and yes, we could have gone with some kind of grimdark model to go on top. But this is also one of my most favourite models that we painted for the channel, and he's been sitting on a black disc for a year. And if you want to see how we painted him, here's a pachow. Even though this is a plinth, you can use a lot of these same ideas on your standard bases without too much drama. But honestly, I'm not doing this kind of work without it being for something for display. Because yes, I still hate basing. As always, a massive thank you to InGames, the Army Painter, and all of our amazing Patreons. Big love, you filthy heretics.